All right, we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this event that we're doing to honor the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. This is a day that was promoted by the United Nations General Assembly in 2015 to celebrate the key contribution of women and girls to the scientific enterprise in general. So this year, it's the 7th year of this day. And so we would like to participate to this initiative by showcasing a few Virgo scientists who are part of the Virgo collaboration and who have contributed to the discovery and the study of gravitational waves in the past few years. So without further ado, I will introduce you to Samaya Nisanki, Arnela Giuliana Piccini, and Astrid Lamberts, who are here with us today and who will be answering your questions. So the most important thing I want to start with is, for those who are following us on social media, please do feel free to ask questions. Put them in the chat under the live stream. And so we have questions, we have a conversation, but we would like to hear your questions. So don't be shy and please feel free to share them with us. So now I would like to start from a moment of introduction from each of our speakers, so they can tell you directly a bit more about themselves and their research, what they do, and what they studied. And I will start from Astrid. So welcome, Astrid.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. So my name is Astrid. I'm a permanent CNRS researcher in France. I work in Nice, that's in the south of France, and I split my time between a laboratory called Lagrange, which is doing astrophysics, and another one called Artemis, which is a specialist in gravitational wave detection. And I'm lucky enough to be able to have both in one location. So I did my PhD in Grenoble, which is in the French Alps. And then I actually went to the US for 6 years, where I did 2 different postdocs. I spent 3 years in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and then I moved to Caltech, much warmer. And then I moved back to France and got lucky enough to get my permanent job. So I've been working on massive stars since the beginning of my PhD. And massive stars typically live in binary systems. And so when massive stars die, they become black holes or neutron stars. And studying gravitational waves became a natural extension of the research I had been doing for a long time. And I got very excited from the first detections, and that's when I decided to join research on gravitational waves. I've actually only joined Virgo, I believe, in 2018. And before that, I was more building my own models. I was trying to understand, for example, where do binary black hole mergers come from? How do stars evolve to actually become black holes and then get close enough together to merge? And so working in Virgo has been an interesting experience for me. I'm still discovering this. And sometimes I'm still feeling like a graduate student when I'm doing this. Still, I've been leading one of the discovery papers. You have heard maybe about the detection of a merger between a neutron star and a black hole. And I was deeply involved in that work. So I've been a permanent researcher for 3 years now. I have a small research group. I enjoy this very much. I feel very lucky to be working on a very new field of science. And so I'm going to stop here and let the 2 others introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. So I'm Samaya Nisanki and I'm an associate professor and the spokesperson of GRAPPA, our Center of Excellence in Gravitation and Astroparticle Physics. This is a center that is jointly located in the Institutes of Physics and Astronomy at the University of Amsterdam. And I'm also a staff member at NICEP, our National Institute for Subatomic Physics. And so my group in Amsterdam and I work on gravitational wave and multi-messenger astrophysics, really focusing on merging pairs of neutron stars and black holes, whereby multi-messenger, I'm really talking about joining the information that we're getting from radiation spanning the entire electromagnetic spectrum, as well as radiation from the gravitational wave spectrum and other high energy particles. And this combination of observations and measurements and analysis is really allowing us to have new perspectives and measurements on the universe. And I've essentially been working in gravitational waves since I was an undergraduate. So that's over 20 years ago now, which is quite a long time. And I started working in multi-messenger astrophysics about 15, 16 years ago. A few words, I guess, about myself. So I was born in London in the United Kingdom. My mother's Japanese. My father is Sri Lankan. Growing up, I guess, mixed race in 1980s London really brought me, I think I really grew up with the perspective to see myself really as a global citizen. And I think that has continued in the way I approach my work and in my science. And also in that spirit, I did my undergraduate in the UK, my PhD in Paris, in France, as well as postdocs in Toronto, Canada, the US, also California, like Astrid, as well as the Netherlands. And I became faculty in the Netherlands in 2017. I guess what else can I say about myself? Yes, I'm passionate, of course, about gravitational waves and multi-messenger astronomy. I think it's a huge, huge privilege to have the job that I have and to be able to have the group as well as to really, I think about, merging black holes and neutron stars. I have to pinch myself often just to think about how amazing it is I get to do this as a career. I'm also really passionate about supporting early career scientists. I think the thing that gives me the greatest joy now, as I become more senior, is really seeing my students, postdocs, mentees, members at GRAPPA really flourish and succeed in their own careers. And I think also in building really equitable and inclusive astronomy and physics communities internationally. And this is really, I think, partly instigated because of the first-hand experiences and challenges that I myself and my colleagues have experienced. And so in this context, I co-founded and am now the chair of the Equity and Inclusion Committee in Astronomy for the Netherlands in 2019. And it's an effort that I really believe in. And this is why, of course, it's such a joy to participate in this kind of event. And then I think finally, what else can I say? Well, I guess without a doubt, I'm a mother. I have a 5-year-old son, and this is definitely reopening my eyes to how much fun science is. And, the realization, I guess, that we all begin as scientists, as children. And this gives me, I think, an immense amount of hope for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Samaya, for your contribution. And finally, I will ask to introduce herself to Ernela Juliana Piccini.
Hi, Giada. Thank you for inviting me. So I definitely have a shorter CV than my colleagues because I'm still an early career scientist. At the moment, I'm a postdoctoral researcher here in Rome at Sapienza University. I'm moving to another institution in 10 days, so these are very particularly challenging days for me. I'm going to Barcelona. But I will still in the Virgo collaboration. So my career as a scientist, let's say, it started in 2014, where I did the Erasmus at the Hanover Albert Einstein Institute for Gravitational Physics. And there I, for the first time in my life, I started to work with data of LIGO. The LIGO interferometer. At that time, I was a LIGO member. So that was an institution which has been part of the collaboration for many years. And okay, so my personal story, it's also a little bit complicated like the one of Samaya, because I was born in Argentina. so in South America. And my mom is from Paraguay. My father is Argentinian, but is some Italian origins. That's why you see two names, and my surname is Italian. And then I moved to Italy with all my family when I was 6. Then I moved to the south of Italy, and then I moved to Rome for study. So Rome, then Hanover, then back to Rome again to do PhD and postdoc, and now Barcelona. So I work in the field of data analysis for continuous wave, which has this particular signal which we didn't detect yet. The physical systems that are able to emit this particular signature, which is very long compared to what we have seen so far, are typically neutron stars. So these very compact, dense objects that we have seen as events, but in two bodies, let's say. And also these signatures can be, we are recently working on trying to detect dark matter with using the same methods we use to look for this continuous emission from neutrons, isolated neutron star. So probably we will talk about this in more detail later. I think people would be curious about this. But this is my very short presentation. Sorry, because I definitely I feel I have a long way to go.
Thank you, Arnela. Your contribution is important. It's important to have different kinds of scientists and scientists at different stages of their careers here. So now I will start asking you some questions. But again, I remind everyone who is following us to don't be shy and ask questions because we would like to answer your live questions. So I will start by asking something that is almost mandatory to ask today, because today is a very special day for gravitational wave research, and it's a very special day for the LIGO-Virgo collaboration, because it's the day in which we announced the first detection of gravitational waves in 2016. So it's been 6 years of the gravitational waves being announced to the world. And I would like to ask each of you what you remember about that day, if you were already in the collaboration, if you weren't, if you were studying, and how you felt, and what are your memories of that day, how you lived it. Who wants to start? Samaya?
Sure, yes. So with regards to the day of the announcement, I was in the Virgo collaboration, and I was incredibly privileged and fortunate to be able to go to Pisa for the press conference. And so it really was a very, very memorable day. I was actually 7 months pregnant. So I was I remember that also, because it was quite, I think, memorable that it was, my son, I think, was there. Actually, I think I was a month pregnant when the first binary black hole merger happened. So I do remember even that event happening. No, it was an incredible day. I think it was, it's hard to kind of, I think, describe the emotions that passed through. There was really, I think, a sense of just it being a bit surreal. Yes, I think for about 15 or 16 years, I'd been working in a field where gravitational waves were going to be detected, going to be discovered, and then actually, for months, kind of realizing that they had been discovered, but then actually sharing this news with everyone was just a whole other thing. Yes, so I think it took several days, I think, to absorb this fact, but just the celebration. I mean, it was just an incredible, celebration, a momentous moment. You felt you were part of this incredible kind of human endeavor of, hundreds of people around the world. And that is something that I think will stay with me throughout. But yeah, I think the joy of seeing my friends, my family, of just the world being like, wow, these ripples in space-time curvature, this is crazy, this is cool. And that is something that, will always stay with me. Thank you.
I can imagine even like the people who know you finally seeing that what you were studying is real. It exists, you know?
Yeah, that was, I think, a bit weird, because I think a lot of my non-science friends had been hearing, and they'd seen me going all over the world, and they'd never really heard, of gravitational waves in the press. And so it was always this kind of abstract, weird thing. But then suddenly they were like, oh, but that's what Samaya's been talking about for 15, 16 years. So it was
So
nice.
she's not crazy. It's actually, it exists.
Yes.
Okay, great. So Astrid, do you want to tell us your
Yeah.
experience?
So I was actually a postdoc at Caltech at the time. I had just moved there and I had not been working in gravitational waves at all. But having spent 3 years in Milwaukee and then being at Caltech, I had been bathing in this environment for a while and meeting a lot of people. I knew everyone in some sense. And I also knew what had been detected, because if people suddenly start closing their doors in your institute, something is happening, and you always find someone who will have enough beers and actually tell you what's going on. And then it finally was announced, and I hadn't done anything, and I wasn't involved, but I realized this was what I wanted to do. It was so incredible. These really big black holes that we didn't predict. This party with everyone being so excited. I had the feeling something new was beginning, and I wanted to go play with everyone else. And yeah, I have that feeling. For me, it was the moment where I decided, yes, this is what I want to do.
Well, and you are here, so it worked. The feeling was right.
Absolutely, yeah. I also remember an extreme joy for all my friends, the people I had I had known for many years, work in this collaboration. For a long time, nothing was detected. Astronomers didn't necessarily believe that it would ever work. And so I was also extremely happy to see that their efforts were finally, being shown to the world, and that they would get careers, get opportunities. I was just extremely happy.
That's really beautiful, and I'm sure a lot of people share that sentiment. Thank you. And what about you, Arnela?
Yeah, I remember exactly the time where when they do the announcement, because I was exactly in this office and I was looking in streaming. I was a PhD student at that time, but the person who actually made the announcement was my group leader. So it was weird, like when you see some friend or someone you know very well on screen, and you say, "Whoa, that's famous! It's famous!" So for us was almost normal. Let me say at the beginning, because we knew that there was this event. We knew it in advance, so that was only an announcement. But then when you saw, as Samaya and Astrid said, when you saw that everybody else who is outside our field is so happy for this discovery, then you realize and you say, okay, maybe I'm cool. And so and so all these years spending trying to do something that also other people, my friends, they say you will never detect the gravitational wave. This thing doesn't exist. It's are not real. And then you see this joyful experience, and then after the Nobel Prize and what everything that comes after, especially the multi-messenger event, and it was an increase of joy, and you feel so little but so powerful at the same time, because you are part of this big picture, and you are really putting something into the wider knowledge.
It's a very beautiful image. You feel so little and so powerful at the same time. Yes, it's true. So I just since we have talked about where you were in 2016 and what you were doing when the gravitational waves were announced to the world, I would like to ask you to go maybe a little more back and ask you why you got into science, what made you, when and why you decided you wanted to be a scientist. For some, it's when you were very little. For others, it's in university. So it doesn't have to be just one moment, because for no one it is. But if you want to tell me something about that.
Is it okay if I start?
Yeah, sure.
So I think I've always wanted to do some kind of science. I think if you ask my parents, I've gone through phases of climate science before, climate change was a thing, just the sake of climate. Then I wanted to study volcanoes and ice. I've done a bit of everything. And then I was lucky enough to grow up in the countryside. I mean, I was born in Belgium, but when I was 9, we moved to the south of France in a tiny village. And I got a little telescope. And I guess when you're a teenager, you look at the sky, you can see things with your telescope. It does something to you. And then I decided, okay, I want to understand things. I want to do physics. I went to college with the idea that if physics fails, I'll go and study Spanish. And physics worked, and astronomy sort of happened along the way, I guess, after many other ideas.
I think it ended on a very interesting idea. So great, congratulations, Samaya. Arnela, do you want to add something?
Yeah. So I think that everything started at my high school. So I was very good student in maths. Indeed, I wanted to study maths at the beginning. I was convinced I wanted to do something like more theoretical. Indeed, then I finished into a big experiment, which is the opposite, basically. But then I was in between choosing that, doing something more into maths or doing politics, completely different. Then I just talked with my teacher, my history teacher, and she told me, no, do physics, because everybody can be a politician. So, and no, you are good at maths, you can do good things. And then I just, moved to Rome and started university, but I would say I didn't know what was the real job of a scientist, and I think I'm still realizing it somehow every day. So I think there's never a clear idea of what you will do, especially if you are so early career. But I think that I probably realized I wanted to be a scientist this year. Exactly. So I wanted to do this, and I want to do it the best I can do. I won't talk about all the difficulties of doing PhD, the mental issues that can arise, because probably today should be a joyful day. But in general, I think that the PhD, after you pass the PhD, you probably are more convinced on your career, because you simply left over all your difficulties somehow.
Mm-hmm. Well, today is a celebration, but it's also a day to talk about the issues and the struggles. So in general, absolutely feel free. I think this can be very interesting for students that are going through this, because the PhD is hard for everyone, I think. And Samaya, what about you?
Yeah, it's lovely. I really love hearing the stories from Astrid and Arnela, because a lot of the experiences they mentioned resonated. So I loved mathematics as a young kid. I did, I think, a project when I was 7 on the solar system. And that, without a doubt, I think sort of opened my eyes to planets and the solar system and astronomy. But I was really interested in many, many subjects. I think at 17, I was already doing physics, and I also did another project. So I think it really emphasizes how instrumental I think teachers are, yes, and the roles that they have played in our lives. But I was doing a A-level project in the UK on mathematical models of the universe, and it was there that I was like, oh, this is fascinating, this is just amazing. And I said, how can I do this thing, astrophysics, cosmology, all of this? And my high school's teacher said, well, go and study physics. And so I did physics, and the first couple of years, I was doing a lot of other things like volunteering in a cloud forest, stage managing in a theater, working in a shelter. I mean, all kinds of other things. But I was doing really these very, I guess, slightly dry courses. Now I think they're really exciting, knowing a bit more about physics. But at the time, it was like condensed matter physics or optics. And I was like, I'm not doing anything about, the universe. I really want to do something fun. So I kind of randomly at the time, it was 22 years ago, wrote some emails and random emails and ended up doing a summer undergraduate research project. It was paid. Netta Bakul actually had replied to me and said, we have some money, maybe for 2 months, you can come. And that was the year when I heard about gravitational waves. And I was doing a project with Neil Cornish on a geocentric kind of LISA-like mission, looking at orbital dynamics. But I will always remember that first day when I walked in, and I was a bit nervous because it was really my first experience of research. And I had just flown in from England. And he started saying, have you heard of, do you know about gravitational waves? And I hadn't heard anything, and so he started talking, and I was like, what is he talking about? These ripples in space-time curvature, general relativity. And it was that summer that I was like, this is so cool. I just, this is what I realized, I loved research. It's really tough. It's really challenging, but I think definitely it was something that, you feel, I knew that, I was extremely privileged, I think, to find something that would inspire me and that I can enjoy doing.
Yeah, I hope that one teacher that encouraged you and told you to do physics knows how important they were.
Actually, I gave a public lecture at his school a few months ago. We stayed in touch. Actually, we didn't stay in touch for about 20 years almost. And then suddenly I was giving a talk in London, a public talk at the Royal Astronomical Society. And I know Astrid's family is here, but like that, my parents showed up. I was incredibly nervous. I was like, what are they doing here? And then my high school physics teacher showed up. And that was like, oh my gosh. I don't think, I was really nervous about giving that talk. And then after that, we stayed in touch, but, really a huge, it was a huge honor to go to his school and to say, actually, this teacher, this, individual was so instrumental, in my life.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. So I want to ask you a question that was asked to you on our Instagram account. Because we announced this event there and we collected a few questions. So now I want to ask you questions from there. If anyone has anyone who is following us now live has questions, please do put them in the comments, in the chat, and we are welcoming them. So the question that was asked to you on our Instagram live is, what advice would you give to female early researchers in STEM? Who wants to start?
Okay, I will start maybe. Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely, go. Yeah.
So I think lots of different advice, and I'm sure Astrid and Arnela will add their thoughts. But I think immediately, I think what was important for me was, I think, finding a group of peers or colleagues that really can be kind of, in some sense, your support group, your colleagues, your friends, your students who are there. Yes, a network, as well as, I think, also looking for mentors. And I mean, both women and men, I think, have been absolutely essential. Yes. And sometimes they are not in your exact field, but I would say there are many, many people there who want to support and to see you succeed as scientists, especially women in science. And it's finding those people, and they can really, I think they have been absolutely key, especially, talking about the challenges that one can face. I think not feeling alone and being able to actually say to someone, oh, this is happening, or this is going on, and realizing, oh, it's not a unique experience. These are kind of common things that we, some of us face, has been essential. Yes. So I think having a network, a support group, and also finding mentors. And I think the second thing, and I'll let the others add, is just to, I think, keep that, we just talked about what made us go into physics or astronomy. I think keep that very, very pure and to yourself. Yes. And I think, keeping that joy that made us, I mean, that's something that's really, there are days I think when it is really challenging, and there are days when, and I have to just, often just take a step back and just remember what I'm doing. And then it always, I feel like, yes, as I mentioned, it's just, I'm incredibly privileged to be doing what I do, because it is, amazing stuff that we get to think about. I'll let Arnela and Astrid talk. Sorry.
Yeah, I would like to add something about this, because it's real. Our job is we are very lucky to do this. And we are sometimes like floating in the air because we are so happy. But at the same time, after 2 hours, we can, completely go down. And you need to be, you need to be very stable to do this. And what actually helped me a lot is to have somehow some hobby outside academia, this really puts your feet on the ground, and brings you back to reality somehow. When you are too stressed or something like that, you do need to rely on this and distract yourself, and you will see that probably after 1 or 2 hours, everything that you will have done in a week because you were too stressed, you will have done in 2 hours. For example, personally, I love to dance. So I dance since more than 10 years already, more or less. And so this was my, way of living better academia somehow.
Can I just ask a quick question? What kind of dance? I'm just curious.
Caribbean dances, salsa,
Wow.
these kind of things.
Yeah, I used to love dancing, so you just inspired me. I'm like, oh, yes, I'm going to go back to. Thank you.
We should open a dance studio at the Virgo Interferometer. That's a great idea. Please, Astrid.
So I'm a terrible dancer, but I think two things that have been said that really resonate with me are have fun, both in the science and outside of the science, and keep the combination happy. A lot of people are, for example, extremely stressed when they're postdocs because they want to find a permanent job and it's hard. But it's also the time to have an adventure, live abroad, meet very different people, taste food you'll never taste. Also, I think having fun is a major thing. Finding mentors is also very important. And one thing I found out is also to not be afraid to ask. When you think you want or you need something, don't spend 3 months, do I really need this and how should I? Just ask. If you want to travel to a conference and you're a postdoc with someone, ask your PI, hey, can I go there? And they'll say yes. You want to organize a workshop, you want to follow a lecture, you want to start a project, ask. Sometimes people will say no, and usually they have actually a pretty good reason. But all the other times people will say yes, and you'll actually get to do something new. So when I started asking more, I got to do more, and it was much better.
I love all this advice because it's also like it's clear that it's not generic advice, but it's actually it comes from lived experience of this, which is so important. And I would like to ask you now, what is a moment from your career that you really remember fondly, like your favorite moment from your career? It can be a discovery, like a scientific breakthrough of some kind that you contributed to, or it can be a personal milestone of some kind that you started a new job or something like that. Because just to have a moment to share something beautiful from your time in science.
I think for me it was it coincides with the fact that I told you before. I do want to be a scientist, because I always I always undermine my efforts somehow. But last year I won this L'Oreal Prize for Women in Science, and it was already 2 years that my colleague tried to tell me, participate, you can do it. No, I will never win. There are 300 applications. I will never win this. And then I said, okay, I will do it. So they don't tell me anymore. I try it, I lose it, and okay. And then actually I won. Unexpected from my point of view, and then I say, okay, maybe I can be good at this job, somehow. And that was a very good push in my career in terms of self-esteem. Yeah.
Thank you, and again, congratulations for that win, because it was an important one for you and for Virgo and LIGO in general. Astrid, Samaya, do you have anything to add?
So right after the first gravitational wave event was announced, so there has been this discovery of 30 solar mass black holes, which is much more massive than what we had expected. And so the first question was for many people, where do these black holes come from? And people were thinking, okay, we need environments in the universe that are chemically very poor, very primitive in a certain sense, that haven't been polluted by older stars. And I was having a coffee with a colleague and a friend, another postdoc, and I always felt that to ask silly questions, I needed to feel very comfortable with the other person. And so, other postdocs are friends rather than supervisors were much better. And so this person was working on galaxies, and I asked him, okay, in what type of galaxies do you find this type of gas? And we start talking. And at some point we realized, oh, we actually have an idea for a cool project. And we find a third colleague with some expertise on binaries. And in an afternoon, we end up with a project. And 2 months later, we submitted a publication to the archive, which became reasonably cited. And these 2 months working with my friends on a completely new project, I completely dropped all the rest and it felt great. I think scientifically, they were probably the best of my life. These 2 months of just perfection, of working together, and in the evening, sometimes sharing a drink, just going home and being very happy of working on this very exciting field.
It's great that sometimes an exciting moment for a scientist is not necessarily well, this paper went very well, but it's not like the publication but it's the time spent working on something interesting. So that's great. Samaya, what about you?
Yeah, I think for me, it was probably the binary neutron star merger, without a doubt. So I think the 17th of August 2017 will always, I think, remain in my mind.
If you want to tell a bit briefly for those who don't know what that is.
Yes. Okay. Yes, of course. Yes. So it was the first time that we observed actually a pair of neutron stars merging, both in gravitational waves as well as in every part of the electromagnetic spectrum. And this was a field, and particularly actually on how to identify the first electromagnetic counterpart of gravitational wave mergers. We were able to actually measure Hubble's constant, so to be able to say something about the expansion history of the universe. All of these areas were things that I had been working on for the previous 10, 11 years. Really in a field that had very few people at the time in 2006 and 2007. And I think subsequently for every day in that intervening time, I thought about binary neutron stars at some point of my life. And it's sad to say, probably even in the holidays. Maybe there were some days where I didn't, but it was really something I was constantly thinking about. Yes. And I remember that day very clearly because we actually had an international workshop in Amsterdam, and I was asked to give a talk about multi-messenger astrophysics in the 2030s. And I remember getting up at this workshop and I said, okay, if we're talking about the 2030s, I think we need to obviously talk about what will be happening in the 2020s. And I said, I anticipate that there'll be at least several neutron star, neutron star, neutron star, black hole mergers, and we'll see their electromagnetic counterparts. And, you know, several of my colleagues put their hands up and said, Samaya, I think you're being a bit too optimistic, you know. And at the lunch, I was sitting next to Bala Iyer, who at the time was the head of the INDIGO, the Indian Gravitational Wave project. And he said, Samaya, I love your enthusiasm. You know, you're so enthusiastic. But, you know, I just don't believe we're going to see a binary neutron star with LIGO or Virgo before, I think it was 2021 or 2019 maybe. And I remember just thinking, and I'm not someone who gambles, but I said, you know, actually, I think we will. And half an hour later, you know, we were looking at that first spectrogram. And I think that is just something that even for me, I was very spooked out. I was like, how can this possibly be? Yes. But it's definitely something that you know, stays with you, yes, because after 10 years, I think, of giving talks, you know, writing papers, doing things that at the time felt a bit like science fiction. I gave a lot of colloquia where people just looked at me and I could see they were smiling, but, you know, there was definitely like, you know, very nice little story is going on here. Yes, this, you know, we'll point all these telescopes and we're going to see this event. And in reality, that subsequent next 2 months, I mean, were incredible. I mean, stressful, but just so beautiful. Yes, I mean, just amazing. So I think that will always stay with me. And I'm incredibly privileged to have been part of that effort.
We can say you were absolutely right. I think few of us can experience being so right at the right time. Exactly. It's always great to be proven right. So thank you for sharing that. And since we did start talking a bit about more about gravitational wave astrophysics and stuff like that, I have a couple more questions from Instagram that we collected from our Instagram followers. Again, if someone has some questions, someone who's following us here live, just do drop them in the comments and we will see them. But in the meanwhile, someone on our Instagram asked, how do you know the gravitational wave you detect is from a black hole merger, a neutron star merger, or now a neutron star black hole merger? Who wants to answer? How do we discern between these signals?
I can maybe have a go. Is that okay?
Sure.
Or Arnela, do you want to?
No, sure.
Okay, yes. Yeah, so I guess from the ripples in the space-time that we're measuring with the LIGO-Virgo interferometers, encoded in that information is information about the actual masses of the system. And so being able to actually disentangle, well, basically, you cross-correlate the signal that you're measuring with some bank of different models, you know, ranging all the different parameter spaces of these masses and these spins, you can pull out information or retrieve information about the masses of the system. And so this is one indication that tells us something about the masses of whether the system is a neutron star or black hole, whether they agree with the predictions. And Astrid, I think, can explain something about how, you know, what are the masses we expect for neutron stars and black holes. So I'll pass the floor on to her, but we can say something from the masses and how they agree with observations we had previously from the electromagnetic spectrum of these systems. The second thing is being able to say something we can actually pull out from the gravitational wave strain information about what we call the tidal deformability, basically how much an object, you know, with, in some sense, a surface, for instance, a neutron star may be deformed or distorted by having a companion next to it just before they merge. So they have to be really, really close to each other, and there'll be this distortion, yes, of one of the bodies. So this gives us an indication, essentially, whether it could be a neutron star by measuring this number, because black holes, we know, are basically singularities in space-time curvature. They don't have a surface. They just have this event horizon. that is basically separating what's going on inside the black hole with the rest of the universe. Yes, so being able to say whether it's a, it does actually have a surface, there is some deformation, gives us information as to whether it's a neutron star, or if it doesn't have this tidal deformability, we infer it's a black hole. And then the third thing is from the electromagnetic observations. Yes, if we're seeing things like a kilonova, as we saw for the first binary neutron star merger, the optical electromagnetic counterpart of these two neutron stars merging, this essentially indicates whether that one of the objects should be a neutron star, because it can only be powered by essentially nucleosynthesis coming from some neutron-rich material. But I'll let Astrid, please, you should maybe say something also about neutron star and black hole masses.
Yeah, sure. I must confess I missed a bit of what you said because I was distracted. My husband just came home with our baby, and I wanted to at least look at him.
It's a reason to be distracted, so it's fine.
So with the neutron star black hole detection, actually, it was because it was, in some sense, the missing binary we hadn't seen yet. One of the key points we wanted to make is making sure that we did have black hole and neutron stars, so sure. And the only two ways to be sure that there's a neutron star would be if we see the gravitational wave effects, the tides that Samaya said, or we see any electromagnetic signature, as Samaya said. But we didn't have either of them, and that was actually expected, because in this case, a neutron star is much smaller than a black hole. And in this particular case, there was a big difference in the two. And so we expect that the neutron star was completely eaten by the black hole. And so any light, there means there is no emission from light, and there isn't really time to have any deformation of the neutron star. And so the only thing we had left was looking at the masses. And so we have seen many neutron stars in the Milky Way. We see them with radio telescopes, for example. And they mostly have a mass that is smaller than 2 times the mass of the sun. And the black holes we see, well, we know many black holes from LIGO and Virgo, and most of them have actually masses of 10, 30 solar mass. We know some of them in the Milky Way. We don't see the black hole, but we see that there's a star around, and that's how we can infer that there's a black hole, and we can have some idea of the mass. And in the Milky Way, the lowest mass black holes have about 5 times the mass of the sun. And so we haven't seen neutron stars higher than a bit more than 2 times the mass of the sun. We don't really expect them to exist because it wouldn't really physically be possible, at least with the knowledge we have now. So when we saw the masses of these detections, the only logical conclusion we had was that this was a neutron star on one side and a black hole on the other one. It could be something completely different, a very strange object that would have the mass of a neutron star, but it's not really something we expect. So we decided it was a neutron star.
Thank you both. I don't know if Arnela wants to add something.
No, I think they perfectly answered to all the questions.
They were very clear. And since we are in this magic world of black holes and neutron stars, another question that comes from also from our Instagram, and I think it's very appropriate to what we are discussing, is what is the most interesting or surprising thing you learned about the universe through your work? What is the thing that made you go, what? More than anything? It's a hard question. I realize, because everything is very awesome. So if anyone has an answer while the others think, please do.
I mean, so I think that most of the things that we have discovered especially with the first 2 gravitational wave events, were somehow something that we expect, but not so much. Let me say that, for example, for the first event, for the first discovery, there is this fun fact that the event was not discovered by a search which tailored that particular system. So the pipeline was looking for excess of gravitational waves with not a very clear model. Okay, So when we discovered this first event, the masses of these black holes were higher than the ones we actually expect. And this was, for example, one of the many things we actually discovered by chance. Also, another thing that in most of the most of the reports of Virgo, LIGO, you always find something like which is called binary neutron star range, and this historically reported because the first event that was supposed to be detected would have been the binary neutron star merger, and indeed, in reality, we actually discovered a binary black hole merger. So there is something that is unexpected, but not completely unexpected for the moment. It's also for the case of the production of gold in the merger of two neutron stars. Also, that one is something that some people thought that that was possible, but you never actually see that before the event, of course. So I don't know if Astrid and Samaya wants to add more.
Yeah,
I can add something that is getting me excited. So I also work on LISA. So LISA is a space mission that will be launched in 2035, and it will be a gravitational wave detector in space. And it's going to see different things than LIGO and Virgo. And the last few years, people have been realizing that LISA will probably be able to find binary black holes in our own galaxy. So they will not be merging like the ones we see in LIGO and Virgo, but they will basically just be rotating around each other. And LISA should be able to find a few and, have some idea of where it is. And that is just something that I find fascinating. And I can see, wow, if we know it's there, it's just floating there, we can maybe look at it with any telescope we have, see if it's emitting light of any kind, because we always say that black holes don't make light, but maybe there is something. And since I've known this, it's something that makes me smile and that I'm getting extremely excited about. Even if there's only one of these pairs, I want to find it.
Yeah, now I'm excited too. I want to see it too. I hope we find it. Samaya?
Oh no, I think I agree with what Astrid and Arnela said. I think, yeah, I'm always someone, I guess, who looks to the future. So I'm very excited, I think, about the unexpected things that LIGO and Virgo and Cagra and Lisa will be seeing as well. Yes, I think, there are going to be, as I think Arnela mentioned, a lot of what we have seen. Yeah, I think theorists have been working for decades, yes, on, in some
Einstein
sense.
telescope too.
Yeah, and the Einstein telescope, the Cosmic Explorer, I mean, all of that. Yeah, I think, the richness of the next 20, 30 years in terms of just gravitational wave data is just immense. Yes. And I think there is going to be a lot of unexpected puzzles. And I'm really excited, I think, for future generations that will get to actually, sit down and think about, okay, what is this? Yes. What are we seeing? What is the data telling us? And that is just, I think, yeah, a magnificent thing about these detectors and interferometers, and really just to stress the great amount of decades work, that have gone into kind of the engineering, the instrumentalists who have worked, really day and night on these things to build these fantastic machines. Cannot be understated.
Yeah, absolutely. That's we don't know what's coming, and that's maybe the most exciting thing. Now I would like to ask you a question that is maybe a bit hard, but I'm sure you're more than up to the task, because it's a question that often gets asked on days like this by scientists who want to help. For example, now today is International Day of Women and Girls in Science, and maybe scientists who are not women and girls want to know what can I do, how can I help. And this is true for all kinds of diversity in science, really. But so today it's these days. So today we are talking about this kind of thing. So I know it's a very big question, and there probably isn't one answer and or a right answer. But I wanted to know your thoughts. Something that you thought maybe during your careers that you thought, yeah, this person is helping diversity in this in this field.
Yeah,
Yeah,
is it okay
sure.
to start? Yeah, so I guess a multi-level approach is needed. Maybe, yeah. Also, my question will be multifaceted. So I guess for scientists, I think it's really important, and especially like for men, things like International Women and Girls Day, really should also be about our colleagues, who are also across the gender spectrum, should also be here to celebrate. I mean, they really do, I think, play a really important role in terms of advocacy, mentorship, championing. I think I think women in STEM or other underrepresented groups in gravitational waves and astronomy, I think that's absolutely key to have kind of a united effort, that it's also not just the women or the underrepresented groups who are doing all this kind of extra work in some sense, or the emotional labor in building a much more inclusive community. So I think that's absolutely essential, please, especially if you're a in leadership roles or management, I think it's absolutely key to be involved, and to not just be involved, but also sometimes, these discussions can be uncomfortable. Sometimes they can also be difficult, also, challenging on, perspectives, challenging where we're coming from, but don't be afraid, yes, because I think we're all human. And I think it's just really important to have these discussions, to really participate, to not be afraid, but also to, for instance, join your local kind of diversity or equity and inclusion committee, do participate, learn about, what's going on, how you can be involved, how structural changes can happen, how you can also support, I think, in terms of different schemes, financially, etc. It's not just about, I think, talking and celebrating, but also, there are concrete things that people can do, and it should not really just be, I think, women or girls in STEM or other underrepresented groups. And I think to really realize that caring about increasing women in STEM is also something that means you really have to look at how this impacts all other kind of underrepresented groups. It really is lifting everyone up, and I think that is really key, is having that kind of intersectional approach, I think, to how we create more opportunities, how we bring in new voices to the table, new people, new ideas, and add to the creativity and I think the enjoyment that we have all expressed today. More work definitely needs to be done, but don't shy away, and please be part of it.
Thank you. Someone wants to add something?
Yeah, I will just add a very small thing. So I completely agree with everything that Samaya said. The only thing I will add is that, so it seems to me that this is a very transversal problem, not only touching the STEM. It's a problem about society. It's a problem that there are no important roles taken by female, and this is the main point of not having role models by school girls, but also boys. Because it's not a matter of, it's not a problem for girls only. It's a problem for everybody, And so I think that to solve this issue, there should be somehow a change in the mentality of the full society. This is very hard to do, but there are some action, as Samaya said. We need to start with these small things. And I think that for me, the school was very important. Probably it's not the experience for everybody, but starting from school could be a good point of starting,
Thank you, Arnela. And do you want to add something, Astrid?
I feel they've already had a very nice overview of things that can be done. The basic things I would say are to respect your female colleagues, to let them speak, let them finish whatever thought they have, support their ideas, and give them leadership roles. Leadership can start very small. It can be suggesting that a PhD student supervises a master student. That's where these things begin. It's small. It's not, become the boss of Virgo, not in one step. And I think being that person who encourages is already a huge step. And then I think it begins there.
Thank you, Astrid, and thank you, all of you. I will just ask you one final question before we say goodbye. And thank you so much for having been here and for all your contribution. I wanted to add on to finish on something positive for the future and ask you, what is something you personally are excited about for the future of your career, as big or small as it can be? Something that you're looking forward to, or a hope, something that you hope will happen.
I personally, I can answer to the fact that we do want to detect these continuous gravitational waves that has not been detected yet. It's so there are people who have been working on this for more years than me, of course, but I think it would be very amazing. Indeed, this is a particular feature, because when you discover this, it's a real discovery, because you can always point, telescope or whatever. If you find, for example, in the case of a new isolated neutron star, and you have this continuous signal with that is very long lasting, and so it could be unseen, because there could no emit electromagnetic emission, but who knows? And you can continue to see it, and then of course study the interior of the star, or do some general relativity test and whatever.
Yeah, we're all excited for that. Let's hope it's soon. Samaya, Astrid?
No, I was just getting excited by someone waving at me very enthusiastically.
They're all waving.
There's nothing that is getting me particularly excited in the next coming years. I feel I've just started the research group, so I'm very excited about that. I 2 years from now, my first PhD student will graduate, and that is overwhelming me. I'm assuming he will be doing just fine. But it's more the whole gravitational waves were announced 6 years ago, but it's just the beginning, and I feel the whole thing is going to be fantastic. And there isn't really a moment I'm thinking specifically about. It's just the whole thing. I'm like, wow, this is good timing.
Yeah. Samaya, what about you?
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that have been said, but I think really for me, I really, really want to make gravitational waves a truly inclusive field. Yes, I really want to be able to bring in people from disadvantaged backgrounds, from different parts of the world who don't at the moment have the ability to study physics. I want to really make sure that we can maximize, I guess, the creativity and the potential, and the fact, as we just mentioned, there will probably be a lot more puzzles and unexpected kind of discoveries there. And I want it to be really, I think, enjoyed by as many people as possible. So I think that for me is an absolute passion. And I think also just that one day, we won't need to have all these kind of equity or diversity groups, because it will be so integral in the way we do science. Yes. And that we will be, fully in kind of it, I think all our colleagues will be, fully kind of inclusive in that sense. And so that for me is something that I am an eternal optimist by nature. And I really think it can happen. It will happen.
Well, you were right about the neutron star merger, so we hope you're right about this too, and that it will happen very soon. So I just want to show this nice comment that we got, and on this very positive note, I would like to say goodbye to all of you, to really thank you for dedicating your time. I know you're all very busy, so thank you so much for deciding to be here today and share with the people who follow us your experience as scientists. I think it was extremely interesting and helpful. And so thank you, and thank you to everyone who was with us, and have a nice rest of your day.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you,
bye.
Thank you.
everyone.